What is up, everyone? Aguilar podcast episode number two. We were with Ian for the first one, which was awesome. I mean, right, we got to tell the story of our V2 amps, and that was a real cool conversation. And, you know, we wanted to keep the train going, and we had a pretty big week this week, I think, right, Pete?
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple days.
I mean, like, to let you guys in on, like, the back room a little bit, I mean, me, Pete, and so many other people on the crew, we've been, you know, hustling and pushing to get not only some incredible content, I think that's coming down the pike, that's going to really tell the story of V2, right? But also just stuff that I think engages us musically and creatively. And so there's a lot that is coming down the road. But, I mean, launch day was just the other day.
2 days ago.
How was it?
Man, I mean, so I guess a little bit of background. We both have been with Aguilar through a lot of launches. And this, to me, felt like one of the biggest ones in my career with the company.
Yeah.
I mean, Tonehammer and AG, those are the names.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely was a big project, and, you know, we put a lot of time, energy, and, you know, resource into getting these amps done right. And even though with Ian, you know, we got a chance to tell some of the background and some of the why, I think for today, it'd be really cool to do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the, not only the upgrades that we did, and I hate calling them upgrades, but just the next evolution of these amps that we've come to know and love. And I think in particular, cabinet IRs, which is a big, you know, big new addition for these amplifiers. Pete, like, what's your experience with IRs?
So I have never gigged with IRs. All the gigs I've done have been clubs, head and cap. But recording, I've used IRs a lot. I moved to New York about 8 years ago, and before then I've lived up in Massachusetts. We had basements. We could mic up a cab. Moving to New York, little recording studios, recording in our apartments. We had to get crafty. And the first thing we did was experiment with cab IRs. And especially when the pandemic hit and we were trying to keep projects rolling, it was like I was recording dry bass in my house, sending it to an engineer, and then he was trying all sorts of different IRs and things. So for me, that's where, like, they're now just a way of life. You know, like when I'm recording, we tend to take two lines, which is something we can talk about in a bit. But often you'll keep one dry, and then the other one you'll play with. You'll EQ, you might add effects, and you might add a cab IR. But especially for recording, I hated recording just dry and just hearing all my finger noise, and it's like it brings out sometimes things that ruin your performance.
Interesting. Yeah,
and I found, especially tracking, you know, in a studio, I got cans on. I'll be like, hey, can you just put me through an 810? Can you put me through whatever? And now it feels like I'm playing my music again. And that's what I experienced with these amps. You know, it's funny. I was on the production line when you guys started this project. You know, our engineer Gordon would come through and he'd be like, hey, plug into this, play it. And it was like, I didn't know quite what I was listening to, but it felt good. It felt musical. And that's how I feel when I, you know, track through IRs. Now, I know you have a recording background, but you also are a gigging in-ear guy. So what is your background?
I mean, it's interesting, man. I think my experience, first of all, I think it really, and collectively as a group, right, we're going to talk a little bit about the backstory today of just how we got to where we landed, which I think is a really fascinating story. And I think it's one that really just kind of reinforces, you know, our ethos as a brand. But for me, IRs it was kind of a mixed bag. So I have been in a lot of situations where I'm using in-ears, right? And I think when we talk about cabinet IRs, probably definitely the most like practical application, right? Is in-ear monitor mixes. And kind of like you, my situation was more, I had the front of house that wanted a clean DI signal because they're EQing and they're mixing for, you know, one application, right? Which is that front of house, which is very different a lot of times than what we as musicians want, either on stage or our sound, so that we stay inspired. And so there was always that tension. I knew I was going to give a clean feed, but between, you know, my EQ and potentially some IR files that I wanted to apply, that wasn't coming through my in-ears, which always felt like, you know, a little interesting. It's like you spend all this money to get quality in-ear monitors, right, from all these amazing brands, and then you just sort of get this kind of like lifeless experience when you're in the real world. And you're always having to kind of just decide, I think, between
or you're
two.
sending it out to everybody else to
Or
enjoy.
you're sending it out to, yeah, exactly. So there was definitely that because, right, second you put in ears, now you're cutting your rig off. So, and it's always this like balance between like, how loud do I want my rig so that I can kind of feel what's coming in so I can get a little bit of that flavor, or I would pop one off, right? So I was mixing physically.
Right, right.
You know, like I was doing
moment.
a split 50-50, half in ear and then half not. And that wasn't fun. So I was very frustrated, but I knew that there was something great here that added to, you know, the playing experience in a positive way. And I think we went to the drawing board and started to like ask what some of those questions were. Right. And okay, what are some of the solutions? So, yeah, I mean, that's really kind of my experience with them. And I think with the our V2 amps that we've got here, it really kind of tells that story that we're saying, which is like, here's our context. Let's find a solution for it, or let's get to as best of a place as we can. Right. And so, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we should tell the story of how we got here. Or?
I think of like that Hamilton song, "The Room Where It Happened." You were in the room. You were one of the few people.
I was in the room
that did it.
Yeah,
that made them.
Yeah, it was fun, man. What an experience. So first, it was like we got to figure out what was our goal. Right. And I think, and this is where this is like my beef with cabinet IRs in general, or just impulse responses, right? Which are these really complex EQ curves, if you really want to oversimplify it. But
sure.
And especially like you said, I come from a studio background. The sound of a mic in front of a cabinet is not the sound of my cabinet. It's the sound of a mic in front of a cabinet.
You're flavoring it, yeah.
It's your flavor, you know? And I think in the guitar world, you know, we see a lot of those pairings, right? Like an SM57 in front of an AC30, right?
Yeah.
Or you know, a Sennheiser 602. These just kind of combinations that have stood the test of time, and we use them in studios all the time. But bass is a little bit different. You know, we're used to taking either just a direct signal, right? And in certain situations, yeah, if we're in a good room or something, we might mic, you know, a cabinet. But you throw mics in front of it like a D112 or some of these other ones that have such a distinct sound, it kind of turns into something else.
It also feels like a bonus. It feels
That's
like
interesting.
Like in the studio especially, it's like we do have heads and cabs and mics. We could set them up, but you could just run this line.
Yeah, because there's a level of complexity that you got to now.
Right.
And
which is standard for other instruments.
Exactly. So bass was kind of a unique example. So for us, it was what are we trying to get? Which I think was how close can we get to the character of the cabinet, that when we apply those IRs and we hear them and we take our in-ears off, we say, man, that's pretty damn close to reality. And that really was, I think, the key goal for us.
Well, it's funny you say that because I remember, so I worked in the pickup department. That's where I got my start work on the assembly line. And day one, they told us we tune these pickups by ear. We have vintage instruments and we take the pickups in and out until we don't hear a difference. Sounds like the IR process was very similar.
Yeah, I mean, we want to try and get as close to the source as we can.
Right.
And so that then kind of put us down the road of, okay, what are the steps we need to do to take that? So now, you know, we'll kind of let you in on the background, which I think is so cool. So a couple things. First, you know, familiarity. So we wanted to make sure that the source material we knew as best as we could, right? Especially when we're A-Bing. But then we said, okay, if we're going to run a sweep, right, through this box, we got to make sure we're essentially sending as pure of a signal out of this thing as possible to record. Yeah. So making sure the amp wasn't getting in the way. So we built from the ground up pretty much as dead flat an amp as you could possibly make.
I never knew this.
Oh, dude, it's in the back.
You brought that up today.
Yeah.
I never knew that.
Oh, no, it's crazy. It was like, because we wanted to make sure, like, again, that starting from the source,
right,
it was as neutral as possible.
Now, there's one thing I need to ask that you didn't bring up.
What?
Where did you guys do this?
Well, we that was another thing. We did this in a controlled, beautiful floating room environment that, we're trying to take out as much variables because we're trying to get to as pure of a source as we can. Right. And so we built this ground up, like dead flat amp, which was pretty cool. I kind of want one. Just cause, it was cool. And we had the source that we knew really well. So great. We weren't listening to something that wasn't unfamiliar. And then what we did was we put the instrument through, we played through it, and we recorded these IRs, and we literally just went back and forth and said, hey, A being does what we recorded from the mic, did what we record from the mic, sound as close as possible to what we are physically hearing from the box. Yeah. Yeah. And part of that too was the mic, right? And so we went for a pretty dull, as flat mic as we could. We actually used a Royer as a ribbon, which was, I'm blanking on the model number, but like basically, we just with our ears, right, found that right spot that says, does this capture the character of what I'm hearing in real life? Right. So that when I put my in-ears on, I'm like, okay, this is as close to that experience as possible, which I think is really, really important for the whole process. Yeah. And yeah, I think the results kind of speak for themselves. Like, because, and I don't know how you feel about this, but it's like the mic placement thing, especially considering that like we've got, you could place it anywhere, you can move it around. Right. In my experience, and I'm curious what yours were, like I could download a pack and it had like 20, and then like I'd really only use like 2. Oh yeah, I think I use 1. I'm like a P-bass guy. I want to find the tone that works, and I'm gonna roll with that for the project. I agree, because I don't want to. When it comes time to play music, I don't want to think about my gear. No, I look like keyboard players who have 1,000 sounds at their fingertips. That stressed me out. I like having 4 strings. Sorry, keyboard players. Maybe 5 strings. 5 strings. Okay. All right. We don't even need 21 frets. We just need 20, right? No. Actually, you could stop at 12. I look at those old Fenders with the 15 frets. That looks nice. Yes. What was it? What was that first 5 string they made? The bass 5 that had like no frets. Yeah. I want one of those, man. Those are so cool, man. But yeah, so I think that's, our approach is like, it's not just about impulse. And by the way, on these you get 3 slots, but you can interchange them. So if you got your own file, cool, you're able to load it up, which is good. But at least for ours, we wanted to, it comes with all our SLs and all our DBs. Yeah. And we, like I said, put files in there that were like, yeah, this is capturing the character of that. And it's interesting. It's software, which we've never dabbled with before. Yeah, it's, for us at Aguilar, our approach is really, it's not technology first. It's what's the application, what's the purpose, what's our why. Right. And then making sure we use the right tools to get us there. Is the tool that we're using, mature enough, right? So I think it's an interesting point, because Aguilar, like we were late to the game when it came to lightweight amps, but we were waiting for the hardware to catch up, and Tone Hammer 500 came out of that. Yeah. And I think kind of in the same way here, it's like, okay, let's take the tools that are available right now and use them in a way that's purposeful. Right. Which I think is super important. Well, I remember early on when I started working with you on this side of, making content and things, you were telling me that you should approach everything. May it be a head, a cab, a pedal, like an instrument. Yeah. We're making music with it. It's not, whatever word you want to use. It's not a toy. It's not, it's part of your instrument setup. Yeah. And I think the IRs are the same way. They're an instrument to make music. Yeah. We always get caught up in gear and specs. And I think that's, that's natural. But then when it comes to art, it's like, okay, how does this serve me in that arena? Of course. And so I feel like that also kind of leans to, how we implemented it, right? Which is, you guys have seen now that they're out, we got 2 XLRs. Right. So that was kind of like the next step. So it's like, we got the source right. We got the capture as best as we could. Right. We used our ears, and we're really damn proud of those results. They sound phenomenal. Yeah. We had a great group of artists that, road tested them and haven't stopped using them since.
Right.
And so that's always encouraging, right? Because those are the people that are on the ground.
Yeah.
And their word is bond. So
yeah, they're also playing a theater and then a rock club and then outdoors. So
Yeah.
their perception is, we to some extent are working in a bottle.
Yeah.
They are in all these different environments. So their feedback meant a lot.
Oh yeah, their feedback meant a ton. And I think for me, especially like being, with the design team and stuff, we want to make we want that visceral reaction from our artists and from the people using. We're like, ooh, that's good. You know,
or like, don't turn that off.
Yeah, like don't turn that off. What was that? Just leave it.
Right.
Like Zach, Zach Cooper from Coheed and Cambria. Shout out to Zach and the band.
Yep.
He was, he was one of those that had those files, and he plays a 751 through an 810, right?
Yeah.
Big stages, all that.
Yep.
And what was the one he actually ended up using for his in-ears? It was like,
It was the SL115?
it was the SL115.
Yeah.
He was just like, it's so warm and pillowy.
Yeah.
And it's inspiring me.
Right.
And it's like, great.
Right.
Who cares about the tech?
Right.
Who cares about any of that?
You're happy and it's coming through in your performance. So everyone's benefiting from you having, this good musical experience.
It's funny because you were there with me. We went to see them at, what was it? Pier 17.
Yeah.
And I think that was like one of the first shows where he got to try it.
And it was that tour, yeah. Yep.
And I could see the inspiration. We could hear it. I mean, right? Because we're fans. We know the songs.
Yeah.
And man, there's nothing better than watching that happen in real time. It's the ultimate like checkbox, I think.
I agree.
Being on the brand side. So
yeah.
But like kind of segue into, all right, so how do we put it in?
Right.
So we've got, USB-C here and you got 3 slots loaded, but the main thing here, and it might sound simple, but I think it really makes a lot of sense for application.
Yeah.
Is on the front. So on the front, you've got your kind of plain Jane DI. This is pre-post EQ and, ground
Kind of what
lift.
people already had. That's what the classic AG Tone Hammer had.
There's your DI.
Yeah.
On the back, though, we put this second DI, which is always in post EQ.
Right.
So it's almost like business in the front, party in the back kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because, again, back to my context, at least with IRs and in-ears in particular, I want my monitor mix to be inspiring.
Right.
And I don't want to be stuck.
No.
Or
have someone else making all the musical decisions that are coming into your ears.
Oh my gosh, nothing worse than being right out of sound check and you're just fighting with the monitor guy. And it's like, these are people that you want to make sure they're your best friends.
Well, it's funny. I went to...
We're saving relationships, by the way. That's really why we did IRs.
But when Anthony Wellington did a class a couple years ago at the Labella shop, he said, know what frequencies you like when you go into a studio, because it's the easiest way just to say, hey, like, I want to boost this, cut this. Even having that knowledge base.
Absolutely.
And that's the kind of thing you can do now in your personal in-ear mixes. You could play with...
Or you don't even have to have that conversation now. You can be like, hey, you know what?
That's the thing.
I'm going to send you this signal to the monitor. Front of house, good news, you get your clean feed.
Yeah.
But my monitor mix, I can go to town,
right.
boosting and cutting, right? Applying IRs or not applying IRs, quite frankly, right? Because even without the IRs, I think that was like another approach that we had. It was just like, hey, how can we still improve our in-ear experience?
Right. And I think that's important to mention. Although it's always post EQ, the IRs, you can turn them off and on.
Yeah, you can turn them off and on.
You're not stuck with anything.
No, you're not. And I think what's really cool, with the IR thing is that, you could, in the middle of a gig, like I want a 410 right now going through my ears because that's a sound that I envision in my head.
Right.
But you know what? For this, maybe like we're playing a trio song or something, or like the band's quieting up. Maybe I want that 115 for that little kind of old school tubby-ish kind of sound in my in-ears. And I believe that translates to the front,
You're very much a neck pickup, bridge pickup kind of guy. You have basses with P's and J's or J and M, and you're very much like, for this groove, I'm going to lean into my neck pickup. This groove, I'm going to get tight in the back. That's the same idea.
Yeah, definitely.
You can say, I got an 810, and next time you got a 115.
Yeah.
And it fits the sonic,
just like
you're trying to get.
I don't know. I mean, another analogy, right? It's like I woke up today and I decided I want to wear this jacket. Yeah. Tomorrow, I might want to wear a sweater.
Right.
But it's actually 75 degrees right now in New York, and it's blazing. We went from spring to summer real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I bought an
Jordan
AC
bought
this
an
morning.
AC. I was gonna say you bought an
Like
AC
real
this
talk,
morning.
I dropped like $350 at 9:00 this morning because me and my wife couldn't take it, or my cat, by the way. But anyways, so we put this second XLR. Again, simple, but made a ton of sense for us, and it was like, okay, cool. Now my IRs take on a very practical application.
Yeah.
But Ian, said something I thought that was really cool. And there was like 2 other applications that we were thinking about, which we even hit us, I think, when we were in the room, was, hey, I could send 2 signals to front of house.
Right.
Because on a stage, imagine if you or I walked up and said, hey, you know what? I'm feeling like miking my cabinet today. Do you have a mic you can provide me at as well as an extra channel? And be like, no, excuse you, right?
Right.
Ian was like, I could send this right now to front of house. Hey, good news. You don't need because in reality, right?
Right.
Well, you're going to do the Joe Bonamassa and get plexi and then ice, like you can't do that, right? In a gig. So this gives him some sonic options that, we didn't have available.
Yeah.
And then also when you're tracking.
Yep.
Have 2 signals.
Oh. I've always been a tone hammer guy, but through this process.
I love the tone of how you said that.
I'll be honest, but through this process, I want to get an AG500 for when I'm recording at home. I can give them a completely dry and flavored the way I want, and you don't have to think about it. You could just run those two tracks, and be like, here you go.
And I think kind of what you just said, I think is another important point with all the V2 amps in general, and I think our approach with all of this is it should be simple and intuitive.
I think that's how this brand's always been. Like that's what turned me on to the tone hammer is like I came from amps that had some coded language.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what this does.
Yeah.
There's no question.
No.
You on stage, you make that adjustment and you play.
And I think, with like this being the evolution of these amplifiers, right? If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right.
The sound, the preamp, everything engineered by the same people that made V1.
Right.
Designed by the same people that made V1 and sounds like V1. Definitely get your hands on them. Try them out. Try the IRs. I think you're going to be really surprised with what you experience.
We're building them on the other side of that wall.
We're building them on the other side of this wall. The crew here has been hard at work.
Yeah.
These are beautiful amps underneath the hood too. We got to get a picture of that, man. It's so clean. Shout out to Goran, man. That layout, it's just butter. So the little details, right?
You
it's
heard
all
it
about
here
the little
first.
things.
That will be on our socials soon.
Yes. Peter, get a picture going right now. So available on our site.
Yeah.
Head over there to learn more. You can download the Cabinet Suite app for free on our website. It's right there. And any other information you want to know, you can find. Feel free to hit us up in the DMs. You got questions, comments, thoughts, man. We're all open. We're people.
Oh, you know what? Our AR rep Dale Titus.
Yeah, shout out to Dale.
One of our best friends.
Love that guy.
He just launched a blog on our page, and we have multiple blogs for this launch. So please
forget what we do.
We did a lot this week.
But yeah, actually, I think that's a really great point. So Dale Titus, man, industry veteran, one of the nicest, sweetest people on the planet, has been hard at work writing and telling the story on not only the sound of the amps, the history of why we did, but also a crash course into IR. And I would really encourage you to check out his blog because he was a musician who, without going into it, he tells the story of, hey, I was the older musician in the room and everyone's talking about IRs and I have no idea what we're talking about.
Right.
And so he tells that
he's
story.
Like, you just nod and smile and then go home.
Nod and smile, boys. And then all of a sudden it's like, what is that? Right. So I would definitely encourage you to go to the website, check out that blog post. It's a real cool story. More to come from that. So please stay tuned to the blog. We're going to keep doing this podcast, which I think is going to be, we got some great guests on the docket this year. I can't say names yet, but we're going to get a chance to talk to our heroes. We're going to get a chance to talk to other industry vets. It's going to be real fun. Right?
Maybe
some luthiers.
Yeah.
Definitely some luthiers. So yeah, man, it's gonna be a fun ride. So episode 2 down. Thanks so much for joining us. Please come back for episode 3. Pretty please.
Yeah.
Click the like, subscribe, stay tuned. Lots more to come.
Yeah.